Again,
Hello.
I am back to explain this Immortal Spellblade build, because this guy, as I demonstrated in the little video where I went into the cellar and just exploded everything at once, he is a powerhouse, and I wanted to go a little bit more in depth onto exactly why and how. So let's talk about this for a second. So first, aspects and gear. So on all my gear, I like to see plus all stats because it really starts to add up after a while. So you notice that minus like my chess piece, because I haven't found a good plus all stats chess piece, this one is excellent in its own regard, so that's why I have it. But like almost everything else, I like to have plus all stats plus addendum stats. So like plus all stats, damage reduction, total armor, plus all stats, movement speed is huge on boots for me. Dodge chance is gigantic on a non-rogue character. So I love these boots, for example. On my dagger, again, this is a melee character, so plus all stats. But again, with the execute chance and the ultimate skill damage, because I use my ultimate quite often. Here, plus all stats, life to kill, lucky hit chance, which is something I've been stacking, basic attack speed. And then I'll go through like my aspects. Let's start with my amulet. So this is a really, really good one. Because my build keeps my mana at 100 at all times, this codex roll gives me 15%. But if I find a good roll of this, it can easily jump up to 30. So, so this is a very easy choice for my amulet because it's just a raw 15% damage increase, and that's just from the codex. Like if I get a better roll of this aspect on my amulet here, also, can we talk about for a minute how awesome this amulet is with the raw damage reduction, raw damage increase, and the raw cooldown? My man, like this is the shit. Um, but yeah, so like the raw damage increase is based around the primary resource, and because this is a cooldown build and I'm not touching my mana at all, that's always there. So this is my first aspect that is kind of a linchpin for my build. And you're going to notice the stacking and synergies. So second one, distant enemies have an 8% chance to be stunned. Again, this is a codex roll, so if I find a better roll of this aspect, I can overlay it. My whole concept with building is find the rare gear you want with the stats that you need, and then put codex rolls on it, like unlock all your codex stuff so you have the rolls you want for your legendary aspects to synergize together and create your build. And then you overlay codex rolls on the good armor and weapons that you've found, turning those rares into legendaries. And then as you find higher rolls of the aspects on legendaries that you pick up, then you overlay them onto that gear to build the aspects higher and increase the power of the build. So that's kind of what I'm going for here. This is another linchpin aspect because the whole build is stun locking. So when I'm dealing 20% damage to stun enemies and stunning enemies passively at range, that's huge. But again, this is a codex roll, and I might find a better one, so it might get even better. This one is really cool. Unstable Currents is my ultimate. So this is a chance to double up on Unstable Currents and like do more damage with it. This one, because I've also leaned into the barrier mechanic for like preservation, there's really interesting ways you can use the generalist barrier skills to increase your damage. So again, this is like a raw 24% every time my barrier activates, which I believe is on my legs. Here we go. So this, and it also works with like the sorcerer barriers. So when I activate barriers just as a sorcerer with my skills and my passives, I also get that 24%. So it's important to like see the way this is starting to like be additive. I've built into lucky hit chance. I was lucky enough to get this very, very good drop of the aspect that I tossed onto these boots. Another thing that my barrier does now. So it's like when my barrier activates, I'm generating multiple effects from that one thing. So when my barrier activates, let's see, where is it? So barrier activates. I have extra lucky hit chance. I have extra damage. Did I have another one on here? I did not. There's a third one that eliminates damage at range. For your barrier, it's a really good aspect. So there's ways to build into like these generalist aspects as well that can really complement your build. Here we see just basic attack speed, which I'm leaning on Arc Lash a lot, so that's super important. This one here is really cool because everything is being stun locked all the time. This is kind of in line with this aspect here. So I'm just like pumping up my damage against stunned enemies, and because I stun lock so effectively, it's really easy. And then this is another core linchpin legendary aspect where that 20% flat damage reduction is huge. So I've leaned away from a lot of the resistances, a lot of the other stuff, and I've just been looking for like percentage stats because I find that they do more overall. So like raw damage, raw cooldown, raw damage reduction. Like these are the things that I look for on my armor, as well as plus all stats. These rings are a little bit of a departure because they had the lightning damage, and I really like that with this build. But otherwise, that's kind of the setup that I've created here. Once more, going into my, I haven't even started on my Paragon board yet, but I have plans for that. Going into my build here with my actual skills. So again, like I picked Arc Lash, and I'm using Arc Lash as my first enchantment because it does micro stuns for every time I use a cooldown, and because again, this is a cooldown build. When I do micro stuns, like I have stuff. Where's the arc passives? They're down here. So every time I stun, an enemy takes damage, right? So it's like even those spot stuns that are less than a second that I'm using the enchantment to generate are doing damage as well. So it's about this stacking of effects. Like when I'm building, I have a very like firm eye for synergies and systems and how they work together and how they can create additive or exponential effects through the addition of like different things that you're doing in your build. So that stun one off the enchantment is just a small example, right? This is the other part of it. So I took Glinting Arcing Lash because it's a cooldown build and I want to reduce my cooldowns as much as possible. Everything is always stun locked, so I'm usually hitting stunned enemies. This is kind of what I'm talking about with the overall synergies. This is kind of like the barrier generation. So like any cooldown I use, again, all cooldowns are my skills. So like all my skills are cooldowns. So it's like I'm generating barriers for myself. That's why I picked this up to have the increased duration on the barriers. And that's when like you start to see the way things are pulling together here, I think. Lightning Spear stuns enemies. So again, leaning into the stun mechanic. Uh, this one here is huge, and builds into my lucky hit percentage that I was talking about. Like I think right now on this character, if I go down to my lucky hit percentage, it's pretty high. Boppity boppity bop. It's just down here. Damage from close. Lucky hit chance. So I have a 21% chance to lucky hit, and every single lucky hit. Like this is something I didn't realize before. If you have a bunch of lucky hit effects on your armor, like say you have one that's chance to stun, and one that's chance to execute, and one that's chance to chill, or chance to slow, all of those will roll at the same time. So if you get a lucky hit chance, all of those roll to see if they affect. And they can all activate at the same time, I believe. So it's like lucky hit is not a wasted stat, and it's worth building into. And as you can see, I've built into cooldown reduction as well. So yeah, this is a rough example. Thank you for
Thank
listening.
you.
Of how I've built and like the way that I've kind of conceptualized this build, and I hope you guys liked it. Um, you know, I genuinely think that this game is only limited by your creativity. So like, get creative with it. Think outside the box. My melee sorcerer is proof.
Farewell.